Good evening. Thanks very much for coming back to my channel. This is episode 4 of Inspirational Invitational, a series where I invite inspirational runners onto my YouTube channel to talk about their running journeys. And today I've got Miranda with me, who keeps her blog on thoughtsandpavements.com. And here she is. And welcome to the channel, Miranda.
Thanks so much. Thanks a lot for having me.
Oh, that's all right. And yeah, thanks for coming on. And I'm just going to say before we get going, if anyone's got any questions for Miranda that you want to type into the live chat, please type them in and I'll get them asked during this interview for you. But I thought I'd just start off by opening the floor to you, Miranda, and you can just tell us about what got you into running and take it from there.
Yeah, sure. I wish I had a more inspiring story about how I started running in the first place. Because it's a question I get asked a lot, actually. And the real reason is I started running for free shoes. I was a very sort of novice runner in Toronto, where I'm from. And Nike had a running club there. And one of my friends was one of the leaders, and she invited me to join for one of the weeknight runs. So to humor her, really, I thought I would just go along. And I really loved it. It was a really great experience. And in doing that and in joining that run club every once in a while, she actually asked me to, they were looking for a couple people to start writing a blog post once a week for a website they created on people who were willing to train for and run their first half marathon. In exchange for doing so, they would give us free Nike product, including free shoes and other kit. So obviously I couldn't say yes fast enough, and firmly believed that at that time, that half marathon would be a one-time deal. And here I am, sort of 7 years later, still running and still blogging.
Yeah, and I think that's probably like most people, that you start running for all kinds of different reasons, and it doesn't always start out as this big thing. It can always just start as simple as you've described there. So just let us know about how that developed on from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most runners, and a lot of people will probably relate to this, that there was something addictive about crossing that finish line the first time. You get addicted to the feeling of accomplishment, and you want to do it again, you want to do more. And you're also, you surprise yourself. I mean, I never considered myself a runner. I never thought I would ever even be able to accomplish the distance. And as soon as you do that, you start wondering what else is possible. And from there I was hooked. I wanted to run more. I wanted to run longer. I started dreaming about what else was possible. Could I actually run a full marathon one day? And that's where it all started. And now I've run, every distance on offer, from 5K to full marathon. And with a small inkling in the back of my mind that I might consider an ultra at some stage in my life. So we'll see.
Oh, really? Which ultra would you go for?
I don't know. I was, for some reason, and I know this isn't for everyone, but I was intrigued by those ultra marathons that are loops of the same track, sort of over and over again over a 24-hour period. I know for some people that sounds like an absolute nightmare, but there's something sort of, I would say mindless, mindful about the idea that, you just do the same loop over and over again and just see how far you can push yourself. Also, I get lost. And so the idea of sort of a very long run over, more than, 26 miles is daunting to me. So I liked the simplicity of it, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. So the loop courses, there's lots of sort of 24-hour races that you can do that are like that, where you do a sort of 9 or 10K loop over and over again. Would you fancy doing one of those, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was at the National Running Show in January, I can't remember any of their names, sadly, and I'm sorry, this isn't very helpful, but there were several exhibiting there, some sort of up in the countryside, and they seemed quite nice, like a nice weekend event. So absolutely. I mean, maybe not this year, but at some stage.
Okay, so you've done all kinds of different marathons and half marathons and 5Ks, as you said there. So if you could pick a standout marathon that you've done that you would recommend to people as a really good one to do, which one would you say?
Yeah, well, my frame of reference isn't vast. I've only ever done 2. But I'd have to say the Geneva Marathon is well worth doing. And I feel very nostalgic about it right now, actually, because it was, this time last year that I was, entering into the final long runs and the taper. It takes place at the beginning of May, so I think it's the first weekend in May this year. But it's a great race. It is completely flat, or more or less flat, with one really beautiful, forgiving downhill right at the sort of 33-kilometer mark. It goes through the countryside and ends up sort of almost to the border of France. And it's rural and kind of mountainous and beautiful. And it's a small race. There's only a couple thousand runners doing the full marathon. And, for that reason, it feels really friendly. The pace group I ran with, I felt like, by the end of it, these people were my lifelong friends. And then toward the end of the race, it ends along the waterfront in the city center. So as you're running down that beautiful hill I described, you get this view of the city and the jet d'eau, that beautiful kind of water fountain in the middle of the lake there. And you end in the city. Then there's a big party, and all of it is just a really sort of nice feel. The other added benefit is that you don't have to enter a lottery to get in. You can just sign up and do it, which is becoming, it seems, harder and harder for marathons across Europe. So, but highly recommended. It was a great race and a personal best for me.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you what you're saying there about more and more of the big city marathons are becoming harder and harder to get into. You've got to put your name in the hat, and you see all the posts going out on social media of people that are disappointed that they didn't get in. But so Geneva, you can just enter, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I think there was just over 2,000 runners in the full marathon distance last year. I think over 15,000 total runners. There was a 10K and a half marathon as well.
Fantastic. So obviously you've got a blog that you keep about your running, and just talk to us about how you started blogging for Nike, like you said earlier. How did you translate that from blogging for them to blogging for yourself, and then how did your blog develop from there?
Yeah, so a great question. So as I mentioned, the original blogging that I did was for a different website, one that was owned by Nike. So every week I submitted a post to them and they published it on my behalf. And that it was only meant to be I think an 8-month project at the time. And then because it was so successful, they decided to carry it on for closer to 18 months. But then very sadly, and I never really knew the reason why, but there were some changes with, Nike corporate, and they decided to dismantle some of their more grassroots marketing promotions, of which this was one of them. And so they shut it down very unceremoniously, just sort of made the blog private. No one could access it. All that content just gone. And to say I was devastated is an understatement. I think I sort of thought that was it. That was the end of running and blogging. Until my husband at the time, he's still my husband. At the time, my husband said, you can still do this. You can set up your own blog and keep writing. And I thought, what a novel idea. So Thoughts and Pavement was born. And originally, I wasn't sure if any of those readers would transfer over, but many of them did. And I built a following from there, first in Canada and now in the UK. So it's been, the blog just turned 5 in September. And yeah, I'm really proud of it. It's, it never ceases to amaze me that I continue to have something to say about running week after week for the last 5 years. It's a part of my life, and one I greatly enjoy.
Yeah, it's interesting you say about Nike closing down the blog. I had a similar experience. I was in 2015, I was the face of Vitality for the Reading Half Marathon. And I kept a blog, but I had to submit it to them and they would publish it. And they did the same. They just closed that down once the Vitality series folded and was no more. So was that blog, and that content was lost as well. So I think that's probably a good lesson, isn't it, for anyone who starts out blogging that way? Maybe keep a backup of your content and make sure that you've got a record of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, thankfully, I did keep a lot of that content that I wrote. And some of it made a second appearance on Thoughts and Pavement, an updated version of some posts that I thought were reasonable to republish, tips and how to post and those sorts of things. But any of the ones that were a little more about experiences, those are sort of lost into the abyss of the internet, which is a bit tragic, to be honest, but a good lesson. Good to own your own content, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And your blog has gone from strength to strength, and you've won awards in the past. Tell us about winning the Trespass blogging awards.
Yeah, that was a real proud moment for me last year. The award was for the 2016 year, but it was announced early 2017. I didn't actually even know I was nominated for that award, and suddenly just received an email saying I was on the shortlist. They pick sort of a handful of bloggers in different categories. They have camping and adventure and hiking and running as different categories. And it was a vote-based contest. So as soon as I knew, I started harassing all of my friends and family for votes. And they very thankfully came through, and readers, of course. I mean, you don't win anything really with these awards, except pride, of course, and a lovely badge to put on my blog. But I think the biggest source of pride for me was the fact that it was the first real recognition I got for the blog in the UK. I really felt at the time, moving from Canada, moving from Toronto to London, was going to be the end of my blog in terms of traffic and readers, because anyone that read it in Canada, they're not going to care about, UK events and races and updates. And anyone in the UK didn't know me. And it's awfully tough to build a following when you're, a brand new expat in a new country. So this award really was the first moment where I realized that people were actually reading this blog in this country. And that was really proud and really lovely to be recognized for that.
Yeah, and I think moving country like that, it's the sort of thing. I mean, even moving towns can almost put the brakes on your running, because you don't know the area, you don't know the best routes to run, you don't know where the running clubs are, all those kinds of things. So how did you settle into the UK and find somewhere to keep running?
Yeah, I mean, a very good question. I mentioned before that I get lost a lot. So as somebody that likes to run and stick to familiar territory, moving to a new city, especially one like London, where the streets are all curvy and they don't follow a grid pattern like the systematic city of Toronto. Running in the city when I first moved here was a real source of anxiety. Coupled with obviously driving on the other side of the road and the fact that cars don't yield to pedestrians like they do in Toronto. I felt like I was narrowly dodging death at every intersection. Frankly, I still do sometimes. But I found where I used to live, the London Marathon store near Liverpool Street Station. They have a run club that runs a couple times a week. So I joined them for some evening runs. And they did some really iconic ones. We ran over Tower Bridge and, along the South Bank. And what a sort of amazing, iconic running experience for someone new to the city. Certainly not the kind of route you want to go if it's if you're targeting a fast run because it's full of people. But picturesque and so perfectly quintessentially London. And from there, I just started to get to know the city a little more. I found very shortly after moving here, Regent's Canal, which for somebody who gets lost is a very helpful running path, straight in either direction for miles and miles. So that's been my go-to for many years, just sort of mindlessly plod along there for, 5 to 10 miles. It's beautiful, especially this time of year.
Yeah, I bet it is, especially with the spring flowers coming out and all of that. And just guys who's watching this, I've put a comment down asking for questions. I've not had any yet. So if you've got any burning questions, please get them in the comments because I need to have time to obviously ask them before the interview ends. So if there's anything you want to know about anything you've heard so far or anything we've not talked about, please let us know and we'll get it in there. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, Miranda, was you've had surgery, haven't you, which has put you out of running for quite some time in the past. So I just wanted to talk to you about how did you cope with, recovering from a surgery, and how do you cope with the stir craziness of being stuck indoors and not being able to run?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and actually, I don't know that I can answer that yet because when I had the original surgery on my foot, I was just 17, and at the time, I was a pretty lazy teenager that didn't really do anything. Very typically Canadian. I played ice hockey for many years, but at the time of the surgery, it was springtime, so it was sort of off season. So, you know, sort of lazing around on the couch, having my mum, you know, bring me soup was not really a tremendous tragedy at the time. As it turns out, if you have read my more recent blog post, and actually just published a new one this evening, it looks as if I may have to have that same surgery again. So, and not to be vague about it, it's a bunion in layman's terms, or hallux valgus as they call it, the much more technical term. It's a horrible thing, and I know many people suffer from them, but it's, you know, it causes all kinds of foot pain, shoe problems, blisters, your toes overlap. I lose my middle toenail on a very regular basis. It's mainly just a pain in the ass, really. I think at the moment, though, given that that surgery was a real sort of, I don't know, dark spot in my history, shall we say. It was without question one of the most painful things I've ever gone through. The thought of having to do it again, especially at a time in my life where I'm so much more active, and so much of my life revolves around running and fitness. It was, you know, it sounded like a death sentence when the doctor told me this was the inevitable outcome. So like any person that doesn't like the first answer they're given, I swiftly sought a second opinion. And actually just this evening, I went for what they call a weight-bearing CT scan, basically to get a bigger picture of the mechanics of my foot. The second doctor I saw was actually quite less convinced that surgery was the answer. So obviously I like his perspective better. But basically anything I can do to avoid doing this again, it is the goal. So I'm not sure I can answer your original question in terms of how did I cope, because I'm basically trying to find every reason to not have to.
No, that makes sense. I mean, why have surgery when you don't need to? And it's not going to be easy to do that, is it? So if there's a better way, I think you're doing the right thing, definitely. Yeah,
well, hopefully that is the goal. If I can, you know, I was even willing to swallow my pride and, you know, purchase some very, you know, unflattering footwear if I needed to, you know, give up heels forever, you know, whatever the case may be. But yeah, it's the original doctor said conditions like this are progressive and will only get worse. So there was a lot of conversation around, you know, am I just delaying the inevitable? Second doctor, however, says that no evidence to suggest these conditions are progressive and it might just be like this forever, which is completely manageable. I mean, I came home saying, you know, doctors are worse than politicians. They never give you a straight answer in terms of what to do. So
you never get the same answer from more than, you know, you go see more than one, you'll get different answers, won't you, as well?
Exactly. So it's a work in progress. I need to decide soon, though. There is a date for the surgery coming up the end of April. So if I'm calling the whole thing off, I need to figure it out soon.
No, well, hopefully that you can figure that out pretty soon and get that sorted out. And before I came on, Donato, the running guru, actually asked me to send his best about the surgery if it has to go ahead. So I promised him I'd pass that on. And we've got a comment from Martin Harris, our Shine Walk friend, to say that it's great to see you both again. Good luck in the blogging awards. And yeah, that's perfect timing actually, Martin, because that's how me and Miranda first met, was doing the Shine Walk last year, which is an overnight walking marathon. That was one hell of a night, wasn't it?
God, I have to say I don't know if I'm going to sign myself up for that adventure again, but it was actually great. And I think that event, I probably went into it arrogantly thinking it would be a piece of cake. And I think made exponentially better by good company. So you obviously, I mean, great to have met you, as well as our other Shine Walkers. We had an amazing team, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a good night. And I think we just talked about all sorts of things all night. And by the end of the night, we were all delirious for sleep deprivation. But, you know, it was a really good night. And I would do it again, I think. But yeah, maybe not next year. I think have a year off, because it is a long night, isn't it? But Martin's actually asked a question now, and he's asked you, any tips for running in the heat, because he struggles with it being from not so sunny Northern Ireland, so would welcome any advice.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
It's a good question. I think so. One rule of thumb I always live by is in terms of what you're wearing, to always dress as if it's 10 degrees hotter than what the actual temperature is. Which I think is particularly good this time of year, because when, it's sort of hovering around, 7 or 8 degrees, it does feel a bit cold just to sort of stand around outside. And so the tendency is to sort of layer up. But you'll roast as soon as you start to run. If you think about it being 18 or 19 degrees, the way you dress would be, t-shirt and shorts. So that's like, I think, a good rule of thumb. The other one, I mean, obviously, is hydration. Stay hydrated if you can. Well, not if you can, definitely do it. Try to find a running route that has water fountains or some sort of friendly place that can refill a water bottle. Starbucks is usually really good for that. Or lots of the parks have water fountains that you can, make a pass through on your journey. I quite like Victoria Park. They have all my needs met there. They've got 2 water fountains, toilets that are reasonably clean, and a little cafe. So if I'm dying for a snack, you can swing in there and get one, which is really lovely, sort of midway through a 10+ mile run. So there's some more, if you want to run in sort of, we're talking kind of summer temperatures. I think there's some more extreme things you can do. I've not done this, but some people use like a headband or a bandana, and they soak it in water or cold water and tie it around their head and run with that. The cool water can obviously keep you a bit cooler for longer. Something to try potentially. But I think it has a lot to do with what you wear. You'll overheat if you dress too warmly. So light layers. Dry fit materials, something that's wicking and can take sweat away from the body, definitely key.
Yeah, and I think I could add into that, wearing a hat. So I've run in the heat in China and in South Africa, and having a peaked hat was absolutely essential out there. And actually, my friend Will, who came to Comrade with me, he said that he kept an eye on the angle of the sun, and he kept moving the peak to shade where the sun was coming from, so that he was always protecting the most vulnerable side of him. And as the paths changed, he was moving his hat. So that was a good tip I picked up from Will as well.
Oh, really good. Also, wear sunscreen. I feel like runners forget a lot because you don't think about it when you're heading out for a run. But I read this really horrifying statistic recently that said there's a high instance of skin cancers in runners for that very reason. So make sure you put some on your nose and shoulders.
Yeah. And you can get sunburnt in April in England, as I found out in the London Marathon one year, when I just wore my vest, and then when I took my vest off, it looked like I was still wearing a vest. So you definitely need sunscreen. And we've got Malloy Runner in the live chat saying, "Yo, hello mate, welcome to the chat. Have you got any questions for Miranda that you want to ask? Please get them in, because we've probably got about 5 minutes left of this interview." So we've got. As Martin mentioned, we've got the running awards coming up, where we're both shortlisted in the final, and of course the voting's closed. It's all done and dusted now. We're just going to turn up on Thursday, isn't it? Is it next Thursday?
Next Thursday, the 19th. Yep. Yeah,
next Thursday. So we're going to turn up and find out how we've done. And that's a bit weird going head to head, isn't it? Considering we're friends and everything. It was a bit of a strange one. How did you find it all going through the process?
Yeah, I mean, I like the running awards. I think they do a really good job of what they do. The sort of voted by runners for runners concept is really nice. Though going head to head with people that are your friends in the running community is tough, because on the one hand, obviously runners are so supportive. It's one of the reasons why the running community is amazing. And so your tendency is to want to support everyone else in their endeavors, their blogging, their nominations. But at the same time, you've a vested interest in supporting yourself and your own platform. So it's tricky. To be honest, I'm thrilled to even be in the shortlist. This is my second year in the shortlist, actually. And the event was amazing last year. I think just to be there and to be a part of that and be in the atmosphere, I mean, that was the goal. If you or I, or if somebody, 3 people will end up on that podium, and that will be amazing. But just to be there will be great.
Yeah, I feel the same really. I'm looking forward to the night. I have been 2 years ago, but I was just sort of a spectator. I was sat up on the balcony and I just kind of observed the awards unfold. I wasn't part of it or anything. But yeah, making the shortlist was fantastic because, of course, you do work hard on the content you produce, these videos and your blogs and everything. And you know, it's just nice to know that people are, yeah, as you say, they're really supportive of it. So you know, thank you for everyone that supported me and Miranda, and we'll let you know how we get on the 19th.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I've got one more question from Here We Are Running saying, hi, any tips for someone running their first marathon in April? I'm running the Brighton Marathon on Sunday. Oh, wow. So this Sunday coming up.
Wow, so exciting. Don't freak out. My go-to move before a marathon or any big race is to basically have an absolute meltdown and catastrophize and come up with every possible thing that could go wrong. Try not to do that. Just be cool. One of my good friends is known for the phrase saying, trust the process. Just trust that if you've put the work in and you've done your training runs and you've done everything you could to the best of your ability, that everything's going to be cool on race day.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, for me, the biggest thing on your first marathon, you will have a huge adrenaline rush as that gun goes off at the start. You've been building up to this for absolutely months. You know, all that anticipation is there and you really just want to get going and go for it. And the tendency is to go off much faster than your training pace. And then you do pay for that later in the race. So just take stock of that as you're setting off. Just think about your pace. And within the first 300 meters, look at your watch, check what your pace is, and don't allow yourself to get caught up in that excitement and, you know, overcook it too early, really. That's my biggest tip for a first time marathon. But yeah, and then secondly, just enjoy it. You know, it's just running. You putting one foot in front of the other. It's something you've done time and time again, and you're definitely going to be able to do that on Sunday. You'll absolutely love it, mate, and you're definitely going to smash it. So have a good one.
Yeah, you're so right with that comment on don't go out too fast. I mean, it is the downfall of so many first-time marathoners or even seasoned marathon runners. So keep it in your mind. Start way slower than you want to. You will thank yourself so much by the 40th kilometer.
Exactly. And Brighton as well is quite busy there. So you might find you get the sort of 3, 2, 1, go, and then nothing will happen because you'll just still be stood there. And it might take you a little bit of time to get going. So just be prepared for that. Okay, so we've got Yadi. He says he's doing Brighton himself on Sunday for the 4th time. And he says, you're going to love it. It's got the best crowds. So there you go. You've got another tip there. And I know a lad who did it last year, Dave Hudson, who I interviewed on this channel about a year ago, actually. And he came 6th, I think, because he's a fast guy. He said, you know, obviously the heat can catch you out on Brighton because it is the seaside. And if you do get a hot day, and I was just on the beach today in Looe earlier on before coming back home, and it was pretty warm there compared to where I am now in Buckinghamshire. So just bear that in mind as well. And that just ties back to what we were talking about earlier with the heat as well, I guess. Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, that's it, I think, for the comments. So, Miranda, is there anything that you want to add in before we sign this one off?
No, I mean, just good luck to everyone running marathons. I mean, it is the season. It was obviously Paris and Manchester Marathon on the weekend, and I found myself sitting in my flat feeling a mixture of both absolute jealousy for not being at the start line with everyone, but also a real feeling of relief that I could just go to the pub and have a roast and not be too concerned. So,
exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, good luck to everyone running. I'll be living vicariously through you, and look forward to seeing you at the Running Awards next week.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it as well. There's going to be quite a few good people down there. I mean, I know that like Run with Rachel and Morning Coffee Run and Paul Adicott, Big Carl Running, and all the other people that have been nominated are all going down. So it's going to be nice to hang out with everybody and just have a catch up. And, you know, I've not seen a lot of you since January. So, yeah, it'd be really cool. Looking forward to it. So, yeah, just before I finish. Go on, mate.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's a rare instance where we'll see each other not in running kit. We're supposed to dress up.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to have to iron my suit and get it out of storage. I've got it somewhere. So, but yeah, no, so thanks very much for watching this live stream interview. This is the 4th one that I've done now, so I'm learning as I go. And what I've learned is that when you subscribe to my channel, next to the subscribe button, there is a little bell notification thing now that YouTube have added in. So if you click that, it will notify you when I go live every single time. So if you're interested in seeing more of these, please click the bell notification icon. And as always, if you've liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel for more running related content. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.